crooked lady cop busted sleeping with inmates. What if the problem isn't the criminal? It's not the first time we've seen an officer abuse his power and end up being the problem, but this is a different case. Today we come to talk about Sharleen O'Banion, the police officer who slept with prisoners. She is police officer Sharleen, who lived in Montgomery County, Texas, according to the words revealed in the report. He is Jacob Parker, a prisoner, and strangely and ironically, a victim of circumstance. But how much is a victim of circumstance? We could say that this man was forced by this woman to have sexual relations, but also, how true is all of this? The premise of the news talks about how she forced him to have sex with her, but we could also have a relationship between them within the context of accuracy. But most importantly, how were they caught? That's why we're going to take on the task of investigating and verifying everything related to this case, with you yourself seeing everything that happened and confirming all of their actions. The meeting starts quite normally. She still doesn't know what she was called for, but as with all things, it is obvious that she knows why she came.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you doing? You need water or anything?
No, I'm good.
So my name's Tom Lambert. I'm a detective here with Montgomery County Sheriff's Office.
Okay.
Partner detective as of you.
Okay.
So I kind of like give you a brief rundown of why we're here, and then we'll I need to get like just some name and information from you, and then we'll go into a little more detail.
While she is seen with a rather calm attitude. The officer in charge of writing the report is the same Tom Landry who conducts most of the interview. This starts off as a simple routine check that's done regularly, and of course, knowing the context, we have an idea of what's going to happen. But here's the question you have to ask. How did they get caught? It's obvious that a prison has a system of cameras that are used to monitor the prisoners and know exactly where they go and what they do in order to prevent any kind of incident. To work as a security guard in a prison, you have to meet certain conditions and requirements. Among them was being able to pass a test that determines if you are someone who can work and how the rules must be followed. She somehow passed all the tests. But most important of all, they have to go through separate training to be better qualified, including knowing and managing all the checkpoints in a prison. This raises several questions. How could the guards in charge of the cameras miss sex between a prisoner and a guard? In that case, how much should she have known about the security cameras to avoid being caught? And third, how did she get caught? Well, the answer is easier than it seems. The officers cleverly set the stage for what is about to be revealed, and what we will see later is the evidence they have gathered. But what kind of evidence, you might ask?
What's your first name?
Sharleen, S-H-A-R.
Oh, hold on, I messed it up. I was expecting a C for some reason.
Most people are.
S-H.
A-R-L-E-E-N.
And what's your birthday?
5/10/89.
And what's a good phone number for you?
936-499-4650.
Where do you live at?
200 Fountain Lane. Apartment number 1.
Video? Confession? Testimony? Some kind of comments from colleagues that led to an investigation in which she inadvertently incriminated herself. Well, the first thing we see is her reaction, which is very calm about the matter, which at first seems very reassuring to anyone watching without the context or information that we have.
Is that the one on the loop?
On 105.
Okay, yeah.
Conroe,
HEB? Okay.
Conroe, Texas, 77304.
Do you know your driver's license number?
Oh, no, but I have it right here.
Okay, perfect.
This was not a question, but rather an opportunity for her to smoothly admit her guilt. We see her deny and explain very basic things she knows about the man.
What is being investigated could be a criminal investigation, and it could just be internal. But I tell you that to tell you that this is a voluntary interview. If you don't want to talk to us, you're welcome to walk out at any time.
Okay.
Having said that,
but it serves more as a small appetizer for what they're preparing. At this point, some clues about how they caught her have been released to try to convince her to confess. But pay close attention to what she's about to say as the officers ask a strategic question. What she means by all this is that the only time she had contact with Jason was once in the jail bathroom with that little incident with Cook, which apparently bothered him a lot that they exchanged words, since clearly both of them were talking, and that, while not quite allowed, could serve as a good alibi for her to remember the person's name. Indeed, they've gotten to the point. Obviously, the conversation still doesn't answer the question.
And where would you think that, like, this allegation will come from if there's nothing to it?
Well, I had a feeling this was coming. So there was an inmate named Coker, Justin Coker,
Okay.
and he got out of here for I don't know what period of time, and he tried to contact me on Facebook, and he sent me a message, and I blocked him on Facebook. And I guess one time Parker was going back to Equat to use the bathroom, and he was talking like at the window with me, like at Equat, because I was in Equat. He was talking through the window.
As much as Cook reported the information, it's not enough to prove it. Could it be that they then followed up and did an investigation? Well, from here on out, they'll have the answer they need. In fact, as a prison guard, she had access to important information, from cameras to positions. Maybe this rooster saw some intimacy between them, and that's why he acted the way he did. But what he didn't take into account was something as simple as, why am I being accused of this? And it's because in correctional facilities there are always records of call and conversation movements.
Did he say why he's that Coker told him that, or?
He just said that Coker was like, don't talk to her.
Do you know Coker? No?
He was a male booking trustee for a very short period of time. And I mean, I worked EQuad several times during that time. So, he's kind of like an EQuad and like back and forth.
Okay. When do you think that happened?
And again, they give her the chance to confess, because if she doesn't, the consequences are that she's giving false information, and that could be used in court as perjury. Could get her up to 5 years in prison, which is a very long time for just not confessing. That's not counting the charge she's already facing for inappropriate conduct, which is something else she'd have to deal with. At this point, she admits that there was some interaction before he went to prison, which is pretty important to know because it's an extra clue that helps understand what's going on and where the accusation is coming from.
I'm trying to get where you're getting at there. You said you were kind of expecting
something
like this.
I don't know why, like, this, I'm wondering if, like, Coker maybe said something, like, to get him in trouble or me in trouble. Like, I don't know if that's the only thing I think that's, like, related that has anything to do with Parker.
So, I was kind of told of this about, what do you think, Chris, about 45 minutes ago?
Although she defends that there was nothing sexual between them, that it was just going out, chatting and joking around, and that there was never anything like phone sex, which sounds like a good alibi, but she didn't expect the following. Yes, over 400 calls between them, an unprecedented amount of content between the two, all stored and ready to be used as evidence of the crime. She still stands firm even when they say they have calls proving they know each other, and declare that although they dated, they never had sexual relations, which leaves many doubts for anyone analyzing the situation. But in this case, she admits that there was at least some interaction, but she defends herself by saying that it was before either of them ended up in that place. But there's something interesting to discuss about how he ended up in that place. Well, as we can see, he went to jail for possession of a firearm and resisting arrest, in addition to having a previous arrest record for theft. It could be a whole case for a video about how they caught this individual and the questionable involvement of the guard with this type of person.
I don't think you're being completely truthful. Well, I kind of know that you're not. And I'm not trying to be rude when I say that.
Yeah, no.
I'm just kind of trying to lay it out on the table for you. Mm-hmm. You kind of get one shot at this of being truthful, and people, perception means a lot in criminal cases and internal cases. It's a huge deal. It sways people to do a myriad of different things,
Right.
And
The conversation is about the same during this time, going into a little more detail, but to avoid redundancy, it's worth mentioning that they met through some friends from Dallas who exchanged numbers during a visit. During this time, it seems that Jacob and she didn't talk much until they started having relations, which she said they didn't have because she didn't like him. At one point in the interrogation, they focus on finding out if she called the prison to talk to him, which she completely denied, only to later admit that they did talk. At the beginning of the video, she mentions that she only met him once in the bathroom, but then admits that they had spoken before and on several occasions due to the shock of him being in prison.
okay. So when you say y'all talked, like kind of dated a little bit before you started
No,
working
no, like he was never like my boyfriend. I just knew him from like the world.
there? Okay. So are y'all kind of talking in a sexual nature
No.
now that he's here?
Oh, no. Now that he's here, no.
All of this does nothing but slowly break the consistency of her words, which makes her worse off, and we know that lying in an interrogation can be detrimental in a trial, especially since all of this is being recorded. But one of the most suspicious things, which completely broke the lack of communication she claimed at the beginning, was the following comment. At that point, the detectives, who had little access to information about everything that was happening, had a complete profile. I think a lot of people, even without context, could understand what's going on. Well, at this point, it's a little more known what's going on, clearly, when they ask if something happened behind the scenes.
Like sexual?
Well, I'm not saying having phone sex, talking about sexual acts. From what I'm listening to on the calls, I take it as that you've given him oral sex at some point, is what
No.
I gathered from these calls.
No, that was like in the world. But we never dated. We just
Okay. But you've had physical relationship with him when y'all were both
out.
They're saying it because there are indications that something did happen. But how do they know? Is there any record to confirm it? There are indications that it happened when he was in the process of migrating from B-Quad to Pod 6. However, she completely denies this, stating that they hadn't seen each other in months, hadn't spoken in a long time, and that she honestly had no idea because he was gone for so long. They also talked briefly about the phone number, the change, and suspiciously, that he had changed it to perform certain tasks.
It's just like a sidelight number. But it's one phone. It's just that number is from an app.
Okay. What app are you using?
It's called Sidelight.
Now what kind of phone do you have?
An iPhone.
iPhone. Okay, is that in your car, or is it on you, or
It's in my bag.
it's in your backpack? Is that like in a locker or something?
It's in the E-Quad.
Give me just a few minutes if you're okay with that. I'm gonna step
Yeah.
out for a second and then I'll be back in.
Yeah.
Okay?
I'm gonna ask something before we step out. Clear. So you got your phone number from three and a half years ago?
Yeah.
And you remembered it over three and a half years?
Yeah. I mean, he's really close to his mom, so he probably just got it from his.
Now that all of this has been established, when it seems that everything is about to end, something tugs at her heartstrings when she sees how. Yes, they came with some information about that, all related to her last call. Here they confirm the 400 calls, but reveal something worse. She, as smart as she seemed, forgot that in prisons they are obliged to save all calls made and to record them beforehand. This is how they came across the abysmal number of conversations that screamed from miles away that something was happening inside the prison. And when she found out, she was speechless. There was nothing to comment on, nothing to prove. In theory, the entire lie she had built had just collapsed. You can ignore the computer. It will be a tool to help us later. For now, it's important to know that her last call was made the day before this meeting, which increasingly exposes her actions and the relationship they both have. But
Hey, baby.
Look at that.
Baby, guess what?
What, babe?
I just won the blackjack game.
Yay.
I just won $30. Again.
What?
But from here, it gets harder for her. What they're putting on this device are the recordings of her with this man. Obviously, the tone with which they address each other is quite romantic, which in the end makes clear what was already quite transparent, the closeness they had. Still, of course, she is still accused of giving false information and lying to the officers. But there's still no proof that they had sexual relations. Later, they talk about her mother, some things she likes, and insignificant details in a fairly simple and normal relationship. So far, there's no compelling evidence that she slept with the criminal. But what they will see next makes the insinuations clear. From here, the tone begins to escalate with these words that cross the line between jokes and sexuality, moving completely away from the usual laughter and into something clearly intended to be much more pleasurable for both.
Does it have like the little blind thing that you slide up and down to open it?
Yeah, but Seth, Leslie's little boy, broke it, so I haven't had a...
Broke it.
Now this is undeniable, and of course the moment must be very difficult for her, because to speak explicitly about what you want to do and your current state not only exposes the relationship between them, but also means that everything was an alibi, that everything was a lie. They probably didn't even know each other on the outside. They just met and had the desire to do their respective acts. But let's see what they think. Here we have a complete change of scene. Remember how she said she had no interest in sexual relations? Then she said she had some interest, but it was just a blowjob outside. Well, little by little, everything around her is crumbling, and the detectives are telling her to her face, slowly cornering her. After that, when they asked her, they made her repeat the story of how they met several times, with the intention of extracting information from her, until she confessed everything, or at some point she stopped and decided to confess things as they should be, adding details like they only saw each other 5 to 10 times, until they asked her the big question. It's at this moment that they break down the structure she was holding quite a bit with a simple question, like where she lives. She gave an address that was a little wrong, mentioning a street that didn't exist, but corrected herself and claimed she didn't know because it was over 3 years ago. For the rest, they corroborated the friend they met with, brought up the mother again, asked if they had ever met, which was affirmative, and even visited him in his isolated cell, which completely destroyed everything she had said before.
Like, her 9-year-old daughter is almost as tall as her. Like, she's short.
So she's like...
So she looks really chunky. She looks like, if she was just maybe like 6 inches taller, like, I don't feel like she would look as chunky, but she's just really short, and so she's just squished tall. She can be, yeah. Yeah. She can be really pretty. My ex-boyfriend of 7 years, he always thought Leslie was really pretty.
Yeah.
It's strange how at first she said she hardly remembered anything, and now she gives so many minute details, like the address, people, meetings, details, and words. She gives so much information that makes you suspicious. The saddest thing is that it's information that constantly contradicts itself, which makes it more and more clear that she's lying to them and that their relationship started right in prison. But on the other hand, the detectives had also lied, or rather, they had omitted information, and it was her identity. Not only do we now know that they are professionals in homicide, which gives them a much greater deductive capacity than usual.
Baby,
I think,
cuddle.
I wish I could. I think that no matter what, you should always want to be in some kind of good shape. You know, at least for your spouse or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, my mom was always like that.
You're not supposed to
like
just let yourself go and get comfortable.
Mm-mm.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, my mom, was always like that. Like, she'd be in her pajamas all freaking day, but before my dad got, like an hour before my dad got home, she'd get in the shower, she'd do.
But the problem is that they were kind enough to tell me that she can tell the truth, mention something she may have done, and be completely sincere, but she chose to keep denying it. To keep denying it when she clearly heard her own audio makes it look more like a comedy. But coincidentally, her brain remembered a detail she didn't mention at the beginning. She's been more than exposed, confirming that there were indeed relationships within the prison, and that may not have been the only time, but there would be many more to come. This answers several important questions. We have clarified some related articles on all that has unfolded.
You talk about how profound this was, like this giving him this blowjob was, but you like don't remember anything about it. It's like you're just telling me something, but you're having trouble coming up with details about it. You know what I mean? Like if it's that profound.
I mean, I gave him a blowjob. How do you describe a blowjob? I mean, is that?
Well,
what you
I
want me
want to know like about the blowjob. I'm just so if this is a factual thing that happened 3 years ago, I feel like you would.
It should also be made clear that the relationship between a prisoner and a guard is something that has its own individual punishment. Apart from the lies, which are false information, they can make clear the ambiguity and seriousness of the accusations. Even if it was consensual, if it's forbidden, it remains sexual abuse, which leaves her exposed. But to know the accusations more precisely, the officer himself mentions them. After that, she was sentenced to 100 days in prison. Obviously, she must have lost her job, or at least her work in this field. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment on what you think.